So the NFL offseason is now in full swing, and we've also officially arrived at the first major landmark of the offseason, the NFL Combine. And obviously, the Combine is about the top prospects in the NFL draft coming to do their physical testing, do your 40-yard dash, do your bench press, all that. But it also represents an opportunity for these prospects to meet with individual teams so that these teams can get a better sense of who the person behind the prospect is. And also, these prospects get to meet with the media so that the larger NFL world and the fans can also get a sense of who they are. But seeing as the actual workouts haven't happened yet at the time of recording and hopefully posting this video, I'm actually not here to talk about that. In fact, I'm really not here to talk about the prospects or the NFL draft at all. See, another key part of the combine is that it's the first time that head coaches and general managers have spoken to the media since the end of the season, meaning that there's been some new topics that have cropped up as each team's management speaks. So today I'm going to focus more on what was said by management and from coaches around the league as it pertains to the Detroit Lions because I'm a Detroit Lions fan. This is a channel dedicated to the Detroit Lions, or at least my fandom of them. So let's get into it. But before we do, make sure you drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads. So first item on the agenda. This is a topic that I covered in my last video because the Lions fan base has been rabid as of late, but the Myles Garrett speculation. To put it bluntly, as I said last week, the Detroit Lions are not getting Myles Garrett. And last week I was just talking, logically, but now I have proof. First, focusing on Browns general manager Andrew Berry, he just flat out said that the Browns didn't plan on honoring that trade request and that he was going to stay in Cleveland, which, I mean, yeah, that's what I would do if you have elite player, keep elite player. But then Lions GM Brad Holmes also came out and said he couldn't name Garrett specifically, but he said the prospect of adding another premium edge rusher was probably not going to happen, which is coach speak or GM speak for drop it. It's not going to happen because obviously Brad Holmes is going to do his due diligence and whatnot, but you can't afford it. So hopefully now we can officially bury that pipe dream, but it is worth mentioning off the top. And then moving on to the rest of Holmes's media availability, there wasn't that much that we didn't already know. For instance, Holmes was peddling the idea that the Lions need to continue to build through the trenches, which, yeah, this is a philosophy he's held since becoming GM of the Lions, and you can see that in the way the Lions have built their offensive line through the years and how they've tried to build the defensive line. That's where the Lions want to win, and that's how you win football games. We know how much this team values winning up front on both sides of the ball, so it is good that Holmes is reinforcing this, and especially given the strength of the draft class, I don't know, it's expected, but it's also still good to hear him say it. And speaking of the draft class, Holmes acknowledged that the strength of the draft class lay with the defensive line, as he said, quote, "This one here, me and Ray Agnew, who is the assistant GM of the Lions, Ray Agnew, we're just kind of looking at the totality of, yeah, it's a lot deeper than we can remember, at least in the past couple of years. So look for the Lions to reinforce their D-line through the draft, rather than trading for a superstar that isn't even obtainable." Now, Dan Campbell, meanwhile, he faced questions that were a lot more focused on the coaching staff rather than the roster or roster construction. And understandably so, Campbell is under a bit of a microscope this offseason as he had to fill both coordinator positions after Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn took their respective head coaching gigs. And there were also numerous positions on the staff to fill as the staff was completely gutted. Now, I've talked about both the promotion of Kelvin Shepherd to DC as well as John Morton being hired as the offensive coordinator in previous videos, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. What I will focus on is Campbell. He detailed his search for the replacement, saying, "I had to do that already one time, and then over the course of the last 4 years, other coaches have come, and again, this was the biggest. This was kind of the phase two, the reload of coordinators and different position coaches, so I wanted to take my time and do it right." And Campbell said that there were a lot more interviews that took place than were revealed to the media. He was suggesting there were upwards of 20 interviews that took place. I don't know if I fully buy that, but I don't know if that was necessarily for the coordinator positions, but I do believe that he has done 20 interviews for coaching positions in general. Campbell also said that building a staff is the most important thing that you can do as a head coach, or that you will do as a head coach, rather. And that was his message to both Glenn and Johnson as they were taking off for their gigs to, I don't know, I guess a final piece of advice for them. Campbell was also raving about some of the new assistant and position coaches they brought in. He was really high on Tashard Choice, who was brought in to be the new running backs coach, and he was someone who coached Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech previously before both of them moved on from that program to, Gibbs moved on to Alabama and Choice moved on to Texas, I believe, to coach their running backs. And Campbell was hyping him up as one of the most coveted RB coaches in the country, at least at the college level. So to be able to land him, Campbell viewed as a huge win. And, obviously, I'm inclined to believe him just based on the fact that Campbell has a pretty good track record of hiring coaches so far. So we'll see how it goes. And then as for the coordinators, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but Campbell did say that both the offense and defense were going to maintain the same core principles. The defense with Kelvin Shepherd, you expect that because it was an in-house promotion, but they're going to maintain the love of man coverage and wanting to get pressure, whether or not that's with four or they have to blitz. We'll have to just wait and see, but the principles are going to stay the same. And offensively, John Morton also talked about this. It's like the offense was really good. Why would we change a bunch of stuff? And it's really reassuring to hear. Obviously, those coordinators will bring new perspectives and they might have slightly different ideas or different concepts they want to wrinkle in, but on the whole, the principles will stay the same. And then, kind of a final note on Campbell, the NFLPA, the player poll came out that it's kind of like a grading of each organization and just where they rank in different categories. And the Lions did very well. The Lions scored a B in treatment of families, a B minus in food/dining area, a B in nutritionist/dietitian, C plus in locker room, B plus in training room, B in training staff, B in weight room, A minus in strength coaches, B plus in team travel, B plus in ownership, and an A plus in head coach. Dan Campbell was one of 6 coaches to get an A plus grade. And overall, the Lions are top 10. They're a top 10 organization from kind of the behind the scenes stuff. They ranked 9th in the league, a jump up from 13th a year ago. And I think 2 years ago, they were like 15th or something. Next up on my list of just kind of news and notes that I was just keeping track of throughout the past couple of days, Jonah Jackson, old friend, seems to be on the outs with the Rams. He was signed to a big contract in free agency after leaving the Lions, and it hasn't gone well at all. He struggled to stay healthy all year, and then he got benched through the season. He also switched from guard to center at some point. There was just a lot of bumps in the road for Jackson. It was just a tough year all around for Jackson, and the Rams do not seem too keen on bringing him back, and it seems like they'll cut him before his guaranteed money kicks in. I don't know if this is relevant to the Lions, in a world where they move on from one of their starting guards from last year, either not bringing back Zeitler or cutting Graham Glasgow. I don't know if Jackson is the guy you want to bring in, but if he's cheap depth, sure, he's familiar with the organization, and Hank Fraley obviously did some good work with him to get him paid, right? And he's a talented player, so I don't know. There's something there. I don't know if it'll be relevant to the Lions at all, but if he does get cut by the Rams, just something to keep an eye on, I guess. I'll be honest, someone else will probably be the team to take a flyer on him so that he can have a guaranteed starting role, but just thought it was worth mentioning. And then lastly, this subplot has been brewing ever since the end of the season. I might tease this in the title, so if you clicked on the video for this reason, welcome. This is the part you've probably been waiting for. Lions fans are at war with Ben Johnson. So for those who don't know, who have been living under a rock since the season ended, Ben Johnson was hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears just days after the Detroit Lions season ended, which caused a little bit of uproar, to say the least. People were saying that Johnson wasn't prepared, he was distracted, the interview stopped him from being able to prepare for the Commanders, he was sabotaging the Lions, just all kinds of ridiculous stuff. But Johnson, whether intentionally or not, has been doubling down on everything during Combine Week. There was the interview clip going around where he was talking about what Caleb Williams brings to the table and why he's excited to coach him. And if you listen to it with this perspective in mind, it almost sounded like he was describing everything he wished Goff could have done for Detroit. And then the dig that everyone was highlighting, that at least Lions fans were looking at, was he said that being a quarterback is about more than just going through progressions and going through reads, which, if you're not a Lions fan and you don't know, Goff's ability to progress through his reads was like one of, and just timing in general was like the focal point of the Lions passing game. And to hear Johnson say that, it's just, twisting the knife a little bit. It's not Johnson saying that Goff is a bad quarterback by any means. And in fact, I would say that if you ask Johnson point blank, he would speak very highly of Jared Goff. But it is interesting to hear him speak about Williams in the sense that, oh, look at all these things that he can do that I didn't have access to before. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at. It's a new type of quarterback that he gets to play around with, which means he's going to be able to get a little more creative. He's going to be able to do more designed rollouts. He's going to be able to have designed quarterback runs, which isn't something he's used to. And then Johnson also said that Penei Sewell throws a better ball than Jared Goff, which was a total tongue-in-cheek comment. Like, he wasn't being serious at all. He was asked about Penei Sewell's passing play, the trick play that didn't work out on Thanksgiving, ironically, against the Bears. And it was kind of just a way for him to be like, no, like, this was a real play. This wasn't a gimmick. Like, Sewell can throw a decent ball, and they thought that that play could work and would work, and that's why they called it. Like, he's not trying to say that Goff throws a worse ball than an offensive lineman. He's just being a little bit snarky about it. Regardless, Lions fans are pissed at Johnson, and it's safe to say the first game against the Bears next season is going to be spicy. And then lastly, before we wrap up, I know I said that this wasn't going to be about the NFL draft or the prospects, but I do think it is worth mentioning the prospects that the Lions have met with in some capacity. Now, this list of prospects isn't in any particular order, and it should also be mentioned that some of these were informal visits, some of these were formal visits. So the formal visits would be like their sit-down interviews where they'll have like plays on the screen that they want a player to talk through just to get a sense of their like football IQ, things of that nature. And then informal visits would just be like some just going up and striking a conversation with the guy. But they have so far met with Marshall edge Mike Green, Texas A&M edge Nick Scorton, Ohio State edge Jack Sawyer, Michigan edge Josiah Stewart, LSU edge Savion Jones, Ole Miss outside linebacker Chris Paul Jr., Auburn edge Jalen McLeod, Minnesota linebacker Cody Lindenberg, Penn State linebacker Kobe King, Iowa linebacker Jay Higgins, Oklahoma State defensive end Colin Oliver, Alabama linebacker Jihad Campbell, Notre Dame edge Howard Cross, Clemson linebacker Barrett Carter, and Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. And if I butchered any of those names, I am so sorry. But that's something to keep an eye out for just as the combine workouts take place and the offseason progresses and draft season gets, ramped up a little bit. And it's also worth noting that Colton Pouncey, who is the Lions beat writer for The Athletic, came out and said that Nick Scorton was the most impressive player during the interview portion for the media. I don't know if that means anything, but for what it's worth, Scorton was very composed with the media, is I guess the best way to put that. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. I'll be back sometime next week to talk about the combine workouts and some of the other major stories that come out. And then we're going to get right into previewing free agency because that is coming up on the horizon quicker than we think. So be on the lookout for that. And aside from that, thank you so much for watching. Again, make sure you hit like on the video, subscribe if you loved it, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. I'll be back very, very soon. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a great weekend, rest of your night, whenever you're watching this video. Cheers.